All right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Monday, July 17th. Fuck it. It's a raw feed. We're doing it live, American style. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat, and the European tour is officially over. I am stateside. I am back in New York City, a coastal elite, back where he should be. And my body, it is 5 a.m. and I have not slept in almost 24 hours. That is jet lag for you. But you know what? My brain does not need sleep to process the box office. So I am ready, Clayton. I am ready to look at this Dead Reckoning opening weekend. I am ready to look at what is going on with this. I mean, I came to America and the sound of freedom
Ringing
seems
in
to be
your
ringing.
ears? Did
It's
you hear
ringing.
it when the plane landed? You heard it, didn't you? You heard
Something's
it.
ringing in my ear, and it may just be the sound of freedom. So, Clayton, could you please give us a plow for the weekend of Friday, July 14th?
I certainly can. Number 1, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 made $56.2 million dollars in its first weekend, a total gross over the 5-day of $80 million dollars. Number 2, just like we called, Sound of Freedom made $27 million dollars. That is an increase of 37%. It added 313 theaters. It stands after 2 weekends at $85.4 million dollars. Number 3, Insidious: The Red Door made $13 million dollars, down 61%. No theater change. It's at $58 million dollars in its second weekend. Number 4, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny made $12 million dollars, down 56%. It lost 735 theaters. It's at $145.3 million dollars in its third weekend. And number 5, Elemental made $8.7 million dollars, down 13%. Lost 205 theaters. It's at $125.2 million dollars in its fifth weekend. That is your top 5.
All right, Clayton. Obviously, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part One is the movie to talk about, to sink into. It's the huge new movie that opened this weekend. But I'm proposing we have to start this episode talking about the Sound of Freedom. To me, that
Mhm.
is the box office story of the weekend. So, like you said, we called it in the sense that we both had this movie coming in at number 2 for the weekend on our weekend prediction show. We both
Yes.
thought it would come in ahead of last week's winner, Insidious Red Door. But I mean, I think I predicted this to make 15 or 16 million and sneak ahead of Insidious. It made 27 million. It increased 37% from last weekend.
Yeah.
Last week we were talking, could this movie make 100 million? It's now at 85 million.
That's a slam dunk. 100's a slam dunk.
I mean, 100 is a slam doink. Now the question is this movie going to make 150? Is this movie going to make $200 million domestic? Clayton, I've been out European tour. I don't want
Yep.
to say European vacation because that's not
Watch it.
copyrighted. It's the BO Boys European tour. And I haven't had boots on the ground, dirt in the mouth, feel for the Sound of Freedom the way you have, being in the States the whole time. You celebrated the American holiday of 4th of July while I was out in Europe. What is going on? How did Sound of Freedom increase 37%? That is a Puss in Boots Last Wish week after Christmas type increase. You don't see this with just action dramas increasing 37%. Not going from limited release to wide release. This is, it added only like 600 theaters. This is just more. I'm not going to say more people went, but more tickets were sold. How do you think this happened? What is
Well,
going on?
did you say no? It added 313 theaters.
It added 313. So not that many theaters, nowhere near enough to cause a 37% increase in its second weekend. This is historic. I guess. What something's happening here, Clayton.
Yeah. So, you know what's interesting about this film that I didn't realize when we were initially started talking about it is that this film sat on the shelf for a while. This movie was initially made for 20th Century Fox, and
Okay.
then it was shelved when the Disney merger happened.
Okay. So
And then
Disney didn't want this.
Angel well, no, it's no I mean, they just probably thought, "Oh, okay, well, we don't let's auction this off because it's not gonna be a hit."
Hmm.
It's a movie that's very heavy, with a heavy theme, starring a star that doesn't really have butts in the seats, or we didn't think had butts in the seats with Jim Caviezel, and got acquired by Angel Studios and now has this amazing marketing campaign behind it. I mean, the strength of this is the pay it forward.
Right.
And the pay it forward enables you to not only purchase tickets for yourself, but to buy tickets for other people so they can then get a ticket and see it. So what
Right.
this does,
Or not see it.
or not see it.
We're
Yeah.
getting reports. And listen, you can't take anything you read on Twitter take it all with a grain of salt, take it all with a bag of salt. But we are getting different reports where people are saying that, I looked online and the showing I went to was 80% sold out. And then I go to the theater and it's, a quarter of the theater, a quarter of that auditorium has people in it. We're seeing
Mhm.
different reports for different screenings, and it's going to be different from place to place. But the pay it forward format is going to lead to more tickets sold than butts in the seats at
Yes.
auditoriums. And we're not here to say that all these auditoriums are empty and that actually no, because people are going to see this movie for
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
reason they want to see it. But the pay it forward definitely is creating a situation where more tickets are sold and more box office is accounted for than people actually putting their butts on chairs, putting their mouths on popcorn in movie theaters. That there definitely is some of that happening with this.
But this is where okay, the first step is complete, where now this is a story. It's all over Twitter, and a
Yes.
lot of times tweets aren't ticks, TikToks aren't necessarily ticks,
Right.
but people are mobilizing to this movie, or at least talking about this movie, and buying out these showings. Even if people don't show up, it doesn't matter because it's showing up where it matters, which is in the box office. The
Right.
story of this weekend is gonna be Mission Impossible just acting like a normal Mission Impossible movie, but Sound of Freedom jumping through the roof. That's the
Right.
story now,
That's the
and
story.
what's gonna happen with that is that normal people who are just interested in seeing regular movies are gonna be like, what is this movie that is making almost $80 million at the box office that I've never heard of, and
Right.
they're going to
Right.
check it out. That's where that's where we're getting to, where if regular people who are not engaged with the scam, and we say scam lovingly, that each ticket represents a child endangered.
Right.
Now
Right.
at this point, I mean, are there this many children endangered? Are we gonna reach to a point where there's more tickets than children that are endangered? What happens then? That's scary to me.
Right. Well, the original slogan of this movie was they wanted to sell 2 million tickets because every ticket represented one of these 2 million kids who were kidnapped or could be kidnapped, or they're predicting in the next 10 years. I don't know what these exactly what the 2 million number is, but it was 2 million kidnapped kids. So they wanted to sell 2 million tickets. That would have been at an average of $10 a ticket. That's $20 million in box office. So they've way surpassed that. They're at 80, what is it, 85 million
Yeah, let me
total.
see what
They're at 85 million total. So now that is 85 million kids. Cannot imagine. I cannot imagine that maybe over the course of human history, 85 million kids have been kidnapped. But there's, listen, I don't have
well, no,
police data
Pat,
in
it's
front of
not
me,
every
but
It's not every dollar, it's every ticket. So right now,
Every
the
ticket,
ticket
you're
ex
right. I'm sorry. So
it's
then at
every
$10, that's
dollar.
8.5. That's 8.5 million kids. That still seems high. That still seems very high for, again, 1 year worth of kids. There's no way that there's not that many kids. There's not that many kids. You'd have to have almost all your kids be kidnapped
The
for the
official t the official ticket count right now is
right.
a a little over 7,000,000. I'm on the website.
On the Angel
It
Studios website. Obviously, people could purchase those at a ticket booth and it won't show up on the Angel Studios
well
counter, but it seems like very little of that is happening.
but, I mean, that's the thing is that you said around 8, so there would have to be people who aren't going through the Angel Studios system in order
Right.
to buy tickets. Those are
They're using
regular ticket
Fandango.
buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, that is the thing is that this is now transferring over to being a big news story that normal people who don't usually go see movies are going to now be interested and check it out, and that was I don't know if that was the plan all along, but if for Angel Studios to be a player in the industry or a alternative to the industry, which is what they seem to want to be outside of Hollywood, this is a shot over the bow because they already have Chosen, which is a huge TV hit. So they got TV
Right.
and movies. Not many studios can say that.
Right. They've got IP with Chosen. They've got existing IP, but Sound of Freedom all comes down to this pay it forward ticket scam. And of course, we're not saying scam with derision, but it is a scam, but it's a scam
Yeah.
that's working.
Well,
And
3D is a
the
scam. I mean,
sure,
that
of course.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all scams if it
It's not
works.
really in front of you. That's not real. It's not gonna hit you in the
Right.
face. A ping pong ball
Right.
is not gonna hit you in the face. It's a
Right.
scam,
It's a
but
scam.
it's a great scam.
So the having a ticket represent a child, that was great marketing, really played to this base. Obviously, going forward, I don't know if you could ever replicate that because it's going to be hard to come up with something that is as visceral to this fan base as kidnapped children.
Yeah.
Your next movie can't be, you know, for this movie, every ticket you buy represents a Toyota or something.
Mhm.
That would a bomb, obviously. A foreign car, their audience would hate that. But you know what I'm saying? What could you do that will be as visceral as your ticket represents a kidnapped child? The thing is, it's just again, it's so many children now. If you're looking at they've sold 8.5 million tickets. So they're representing 8.5 million kidnapped children. Um yeah, it's now it's almost like you're getting honestly, you're only getting like half a child per
Mhm.
ticket.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like when you really look at it, I think people are going to look back. The more tickets this movie sells, once it gets to 200 million domestic, then people are going to look back and they're going to see the number of how many kidnapped children there are, how many tickets they sold. So they're going to have to look at it realistically and say, my ticket in the end was only worth a quarter of a kidnapped
Yeah,
child.
absolutely, and how will they feel about that? Will they
How they
feel
feel about
betrayed
that.
by that?
Right, right. And here's something for the future. Obviously, we focus on box office, but does Sound of Freedom go to PVOD or do they just try and sell physical DVDs in 6 to 8 months? And then at that point, does each DVD sale equal a child? Maybe because it's
Mhm.
DVD, it's a lower quality product it than it going to a movie theater. Right off the bat, they say every DVD equals one third of a kidnapped child.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
and see how
they
that
can't
goes.
make they can't make it the same worth as a theatrical experience.
Right. Now, if you're a theater owner, and again, I think this is something we're really going to have to dig into in the next week to see how many of these pay it forward Sound of Freedom tickets equal people going to the theaters. Um, I am just curious to get the input from theater owners on how this movie is doing for them.
Mhm.
If they are, but the thing is, people are going to this movie in way bigger numbers than they ever could have expected. These theater owners ever could have expected. So even if these auditoriums sell 80% of the capacity and only 20% of people are there, this is a movie that you thought would have sold almost no tickets in its second weekend a couple of weeks ago. So it's found money, it's found popcorn for these
They
theaters, even if
yeah,
the pay it forward gives you a lot of empty seats for tickets sold.
they wouldn't be adding theaters if this was bad for theatrical.
Right,
And like
right.
you said, these sort of religious movies barely ever top out higher than the $30 million mark. I mean, that's a
R-
huge hit for a religious film. And
Right.
this thing is going batshit crazy, is going to end up bigger than a lot of movies that we thought were going to be big hits this summer. And that is found money for the theater. When you get into a movie making over $100 million, like you said, that's amazing. Even if
Right.
they're not buying as much popcorn as someone who goes to see Spidey cartoon.
Right. I mean, right now, Sound of Freedom's at 85 million. I think 150 is gonna happen at this point. We're looking
Mhm.
at a movie that could do 150 to 200 million. And so that gives Sound of Freedom a chance to it will outgross Insidious Red Door all the way through. I mean, that's a definite.
Yeah.
It could conceivably make more than Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny domestic. Right now,
Could make
Indiana
more than The
Jones,
Flash.
I mean, it's gonna make more than the Flash. Flash is topped out at 106, so that's a slam doink. Sound of Freedom's gonna make more than the Flash. It's gonna make more than No Hard Feelings. It's gonna probably make more than Transformers, which is now at 152 after making 3 million last weekend. So
Uh-huh.
Transformers probably tops out at 160. And
Yeah.
I think at this point, Sound of Freedom does over 160. It's going to make more than Elemental, which is at 125, and made 8 million last week. So Elemental could get to 150, but again, I think Sound of Freedom is making more than that. Um, I mean, those are like 4 or 5 big summer movies that Sound of Freedom is probably going to end up making more than. This is out of control.
And here's the other benefit that Sound of Freedom has is that you don't have to see this on the biggest screen possible.
Right.
There aren't people who are saying, "Well, the IMAXs for Sound of Freedom are sold out, so I'm gonna go next week." They're going and sitting in theaters that have no air conditioning.
Okay.
They're just
Mhm.
going to places to see this that are rat hole movie theaters. And
Right.
I'm not saying that rat hole movie theaters are good. They're bad. We'll get into Mission Impossible and why there should be more PLFs, which we pound that drum every weekend and even more so now. We need to
Mhm.
talk about that. But this is beneficial for how theaters and theatrical are set up now, which is that there are these bad, crappy, ripped up seat
Mhm.
theaters that people will go see this movie in just to promote this movie,
Support. Yeah.
support
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, every theater has a rat hole auditorium in it. Every theater, even the nicest, newest movie theater in the trendiest neighborhood, is going to have that one screening room that's got a screen the size of a television, and it's got the fabric chairs, and the AC doesn't work, and there's bugs running around on the floor. Even if next door it's got an IMAX with leather reclining seats that warm your butt, and they're giving out truffle popcorn and that kind of. There's always a rat hole auditorium,
Yeah.
and we're seeing different people are posting. Oh, the Sound of Freedom Theater had no AC. The Sound of Freedom Theater had staples sticking out of the seat. Whatever they're saying, and the thing is, they're
Welcome to the
complaining.
theater going experience.
Well, I think that's something a lot of Sound of Freedom theater goers haven't been to a movie in a long time, and they're not realizing that there's always a rat hole auditorium. The AC is always off in at least one auditorium in every theater, and you just happen to be in the one. Now, and I think the theater owners know they could put Sound of Freedom in their rat hole auditorium because
They could put it in a broom closet.
they could put it in a
Just
broom
pull the
closet.
screen down and project it. It's people can sit on buckets, turned over buckets, and they'll watch this movie.
They'll watch it. Maybe they'll complain. They'll put a complaining TikTok on there afterwards, and they'll say, "Oh, the theater owners didn't want us to see it." No, they wanted you in there. They just wanted you in their rat hole auditorium that had no AC, because the people who would go see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, they're not going to put up with that. But the Sound of Freedom people, they're going to put up with that, because for them, Sound of Freedom is a cause. For Guardians of the Galaxy viewers, it's not a cause, or at least
And
not
also,
in its sixth weekend. It's not a cause. So they're not going to sit in the rat hole auditorium.
a lot of them are just going to buy tickets and not show up, right? I mean, that's
Right.
also not a thing too. But out of those 313 theaters that were added, how many of those were janitorial closets? I'm
Right.
not saying that there. I mean, probably 25% of those were converted rooms
Right.
that are just selling tickets because people are buying tickets.
At this point, you know, so many of those tickets sold are not going to be used, because they're paid forward tickets, and you're sending tickets to people who don't even know that someone's sending them a ticket. So they're not going to go.
But you have
Theaters,
to you do have to go to the step of putting the code in and getting the ticket. Once you do that, it's a ticket that is usable. But
got it.
again, those codes are just floating around. If you try to if it once you buy a ticket to pay forward, it generates a code, and that code is money, right? So
Right,
it's just
right,
living there. So it
right.
is like it's even if people never cash those in, that is money that somebody paid.
I mean, theaters at this point could just start setting up pretend screening rooms for this movie. Forget the rat hole auditorium with no AC, forget sticking it in a janitor's closet. They could just, I mean, honestly, that I think is the next level of the scam, is everyday Americans could just say, "Hey, I run a movie theater that's showing Sound of Freedom,"
Mhm.
and just say that their kitchen is a Sound of Freedom screening room, and let Angel Studios set up a pay it forward that directs ticket buyers to their kitchen.
Yeah.
Because if people aren't going to show up, and maybe you get two or three guys who buy tickets to the Sound of Freedom and they go to your house because they really do think it's a movie theater. So you'll have to deal with that. But you
Yeah.
might sell like 40 tickets to pay it forward people who will never show up. And to
I
me,
mean,
that's a great business model right now for the next couple of weeks. It's not something you could count on 3 to 6 months from now. But I think next week people could start setting their kitchens up as fake Sound of Freedom screening rooms to generate some ticket sales for themselves.
yeah. I mean, we don't know how high this thing could go, but the main thing is that it could go all summer because once Barbie and Oppenheimer are out, you're going to get Mission Impossible people probably, seeing that film, but there's really not much big coming after that, and Sound of Freedom could just keep on gobbling up these theaters
Right,
because
right.
they don't have to be all the big movies can get the PLFs, and this can just be in all the little rat holes.
So last week, Sound of Freedom added 313 theaters. Of those 313 theaters, how many of them do you think were early scammers who said that their kitchen is a movie theater that's showing Sound of Freedom?
I don't think yet. I think
You don't
that's
think yet?
next week. I think when
Okay.
the theater counts increase, even though you have Barbie, Oppenheimer, and Mission Impossible, that's when we know kitchens are in play.
Yes, yes,
That's when we'll
yes.
know kitchens are in play. I think most of these new theaters are janitorial closets,
Okay,
but
and
they're
and
not
rat hole
homes yet.
auditoriums.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
rat hole auditoriums and janitorial closets, but they're not homes yet. They are not kitchens. They're not garages. They are not the side of buildings.
These, and again, you're seeing some videos of Sound of Freedom moviegoers saying my theater had no AC, my theater had, thumbtacks sticking out of the seat cushions, whatever. I think part of that is theater owners, they're sticking them in their rat hole auditoriums, but it's also in a way giving the customers what they want, because I do think a lot of the Sound of Freedom theater goers, they want to be tested. It's a religious crowd, and part of any religion, or is trials and tribulations, and having your faith tested. And I think that turning the AC off, or putting them in the theaters, the auditoriums where the AC is already broken, is a way of giving this crowd what it wants, which is to test their faith.
Well,
Can you sit in a sweaty auditorium to show your faith in Sound of Freedom? So to me, that's like, I don't know. I think that's like rumble seats for going to see Avatar.
I
No
mean,
AC is like the rumble seats.
not to be blasphemous, but I mean, Jesus was lost in the desert for
Right.
I don't know how many, what was it, years,
Years, I
whatever,
think. Yeah.
years. And they can sit in a theater for a 2-hour movie and sweat a little bit and feel a tiny bit of what Jesus felt. And then
Right.
the other thing about it is that a lot of the people who are behind this movie and are going to see this, like you said, their whole thing is they want someone to try to stop them. They're all about the gospel of the mask. Somebody stop me, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Somebody stop me.
Somebody stop me. Yes,
Now, I
exactly.
cannot do an imitation of the mask because I am a SAG after member and I am on strike. So you will not be
Yes.
hearing any imitations of anybody. I can
Yes.
say quotes from movies, but I cannot act them out or try to mimic them because that is acting.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
am on strike currently.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
why if you think that that was half-assed, it's not. That was solidarity you were hearing.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
But
Clayton
there
is on
is
strike.
I am on strike. There is an element of an obstacle is positive for this group. They
Hmm.
want to think that this is something other people don't want them to see. And it's all this marketing is just expert. And then this viral thing that's going on where people are realizing that most movie theaters have terrible screening rooms, but they never go see movies.
Right. Right. And I think that is an opportunity lost for for theater owners in general, or for the movie going populaces, businesses, that you've got this new group of people who are buying movie tickets. Some of them are going to the movie theater for the first time in God knows how long, and they're getting a bad movie theater experience if they're
No,
getting
but
no AC.
for
But
this
for them,
audience,
they
they
love it.
want
They
it.
love it.
They want
That's
it.
what they
We
want.
can't stay on this too long because we gotta talk Mission
We got to
Impossible,
talk Mission
but
Impossible.
at the end of a video, we got sent a video of a couple, a young couple, who were talking about their screening where they didn't turn the lights off and they didn't put on the air conditioning. Number 1, these theaters are run by teenagers, okay? Of
Right.
course, this
Right.
guy was smoking a vape and not paying attention to what he was supposed to be doing, and he didn't
Of
turn the air
course.
conditioning on, he didn't turn the lights down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of that video, they didn't say, "Don't go to see this movie." They said, "Go see this movie." They
Yes.
said, "Go see it."
They said go see
So
it. They love the experience of sweating in that movie theater. They In the end, that's what they needed. That's what
there
they
could be a
needed. They
video
wanted
where
to be
someone says,
tested.
the cops came in and dragged out the guy next to me. We asked them why, and they said, shut up and watch the movie." And they drag someone out. And those people would talk about this in a TikTok and they would say, "You have to see this movie
You have to see
because
this movie.
someone got dragged out by the cops. You have to see this movie."
Here's the last.
There's nothing horrible that could happen in one of these theaters that someone wouldn't TikTok about it and say, "You have to see it."
You have to see it. It's all good marketing for Sound of Freedom. If Jesus was alive today and going to movies, he would go see his movies. He would go see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He would go see Barbie. He would go see Oppenheimer. And
Same day.
he would see them in the worst movie theater possible. Because remember for famous ending of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Jesus's cup was not the one with all the sparkly diamonds. It was the wooden cup. He was a carpenter. He would sit in
Mhm.
the auditorium that has no AC and has thumbtacks in the seats and has the lights on the entire time. And so that is what these Sound of Freedom theater goers actually want. So it's all working. It's all working. Clayton, we got to talk about it. I mean, it just goes to show we haven't talked about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 because Sound of Freedom was so big, but we got to get into this. I mean, it
It performed like
underperformed.
it it underperformed our expectations. It did
Yes,
not have a Top Gun Maverick bump.
it didn't
It
happen. No.
it performed like a Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the money that a Mission Impossible movie makes, so now we know that this franchise has a ceiling.
Yes. Yes. If it was ever gonna bust out in a major way, you would have thought this would have been the one because it's the movie that came out a year after Top Gun Maverick. And that didn't happen. Obviously, this movie did not do poorly in any way, but it is not going to be a Top Gun Maverick, and it's not going to be anywhere. I think the thing that we saw with this opening weekend is it's going to be very unlikely that this worldwide gets to $1 billion, which I think
Mhm.
was a hope a couple of months ago, or even a
But
week ago. Even a week ago, there was still the hope that Dead Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 could be $1 billion baby, and now that seems unlikely.
so let's go over the numbers.
Yep.
56.2 for the 3-day, 80 million for the 5-day. I mean, this started on a Wednesday with Tuesday previews.
Yeah. I'll throw to you on this first. Do you feel like that was a mistake? Should this have just opened on Friday,
Yeah.
July 14th?
And I hate to be I know why they did it, to try and get these PLFs, to try to get these IMAXs. I mean, this movie did Bobo in
Mhm.
IMAXs and PLFs. I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
these Tom Cruise movies, he keeps saying, "See it in the biggest screen, see it in the biggest screen, see it in the biggest screen," and people are
Right.
doing it.
Right.
Those are sold out. Those screens are sold out. And
Right.
the
Right.
problem is there's only so many. So, people are
Right.
going to wait for a PLF to see this movie. So that's why all these Sound of Freedom people are getting all these theaters because people are not going to see this movie necessarily in a regular theater because they've been told you have to see him jump off a cliff on a motorcycle with no strings in the biggest screen possible, and they're going along with it. But the
Right.
fact is there's limited screens. So what's keeping this movie from going higher is that there's so much competition for these screens, where Maverick didn't have that because Maverick had the perfect opening weekend and the perfect runway. And
Yeah.
also, I will say though, this was never gonna be Maverick because
Never.
it's a once in a lifetime movie. Like we said, it's a flash during our deathbed movie.
Right.
This is a 7th installment in a franchise
Right.
that is still going strong, but it just didn't break out from what it normally does.
Right. 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 And with Maverick, obviously, like any Tom Cruise movie, there was the push that you want to see this in IMAX, you want to see this in a PLF. But I do think Maverick had that emotional component and that
Mhm,
character component that allowed it to do huge business in just standard movie theaters in a way
yeah,
that Mission Impossible was all about the stunts and was
mhm,
all about seeing the special effects or seeing the stunts or seeing it in PLFs, that the non PLF screenings were not a priority and not as sold out as Maverick was in standard movie theaters because people went to see Maverick because it was a sequel. It was the first sequel to a beloved movie from 30 years prior. And there was all that emotional attachment that people had for the character, for Val Kilmer coming back, so on and so forth. And the patriotism factor that is not part of a
absolutely.
Mission Impossible. These movies are much more international globe trotting. And whereas Maverick, you know, is very, very is going to excite that, that American Stacks and Plain Billy and Earth Dog base that Mission
Now,
Impossible always has trouble with.
I've gotten pushback about this, where Ethan
Mhm.
Hunt, I think, is a cold character. I've been told by a very close friend that all he does is sacrifice his mission for the people he loves. But you don't feel that when you watch this movie, you don't think of Ethan Hunt as a person. Ethan Hunt
Right.
is a machine,
Right.
where Maverick had humanity. Maverick was the best at everything, but still, he had to jump out a window when his paramour's daughter showed up and he gets
Right, right.
caught as a 50 some year old man. That's humanity. That
Right.
showed humanity. Him wrestling with the death of his flight partner and dealing with the son that hated him, Goose's son. This is humanity here. That's lacking in these movies. As much as I like them, it's lacking there. And that is something that connects people in a way that is greater than Ethan Hunt just does crazy shit, which is awesome to see on a big screen, but it's not going to get the repeat viewings that make people cry. I mean, I saw Maverick 3 times in the theater and I got misty every single time.
Right. So look, putting Maverick aside and then just looking at this movie in terms of the Mission Impossible franchise, there was still the hope that this would be the Fast 7 of the series. And this is the
Mhm.
seventh Mission Impossible. That even though you're this deep into the series, this would be one that really breaks out from the previous. And that didn't happen. And so I think with this series, you've got to just assume that's never going to happen. And again, this is a high grossing movie, made 57 in the 3-day, over 80 million for the 5-day. It's a fine opening weekend, but I think, like you said, this series has a ceiling and is never going to break out past what it already has. In some ways, Fallout feels like the high watermark of the series because that's the
Yeah.
one that really did a jump from the previous.
Yep, it
Whereas,
had a 61 million opening, which is more than this did.
right,
I mean, it's probably gonna I mean, this movie will have legs because I do see it coming back to premium screens after Barbie and Oppenheimer
maybe,
have but I mean, the thing is, okay, we won't get into it, but Barbie is gonna be so massive that it
yes,
may just eat everything
I, I,
because
I
and I think that's what we're seeing with these pre-sales. These pre-sales are redonkulous. So
yeah,
we can't get into that now, but the idea that this movie is going to somehow survive and thrive in a way that, you know, Fallout did, I don't think works because like you said, there may not be any screens for it. It'll do fine, but it's not gonna be this crazy, crazy step up from
right.
Fallout. It might
I
do
think
less, it's probably gonna do less.
yeah, it's interesting because this series is a leggy series. It caters to an older audience. Older audiences don't necessarily go at opening weekend. So on one hand, you definitely could say this will be a leggy run throughout the rest of the summer, and the slightly underperforming opening weekend isn't a big deal because it's just going to bank weekend after weekend. But I think that some of the issues it has going forward is that Oppenheimer is very direct competition. Next weekend
Mhm.
Oppenheimer comes out and the tracking on that is good. It's going to open at half of what Barbie makes, but it's still going to make 40 or 50 million. And that is a direct conflicting audience with Mission Impossible. That is adults and that is people looking for a more serious movie than you get in the summer. Sound of Freedom is also conflicts
Yep.
with this older audience. That probably did. I didn't think it was going to be possible, but that did
But who
legitimately
did?
take some of the Maverick bomb. No, you
I
did, and you were eating dirt, and
Yeah.
now I'm eating some crow.
Well,
But
because you were eating baguettes in the south of
I
France or
was eating
wherever you
baguettes.
were.
Oh,
There
the
is no way
delicious
I will give you
fromage. I was eating fromage.
I don't know what that
You would call
is.
them cheeses. I call them fromage.
Okay, well, you're an American now, so you call them cheeses, but here's the thing. I can give you a pass because you were over there breathing French air. You weren't in
Right.
your right mind. You didn't
Right.
know. You couldn't hear the sound of freedom
Right.
across the ocean. But now you're back in the New York groove, and
Right.
you're hearing the bells, the bells, the
Yeah.
bells.
So Sound of Freedom definitely did eat into the possible Maverick bump, but I do think what's going to hurt the legs of Mission Impossible the next month is if Barbie opens to 100, some crazy number, which is now very much on the table.
Well, people
I
are
think,
saying it could do close to Mario numbers.
yeah, the Barbie number, we'll get into it later in the week, could be just out of control.
Yeah.
And right now, Barbie was the one that was getting pushed aside for the PLFs. If Barbie does what Barbie looks like it's going to do, it is going to get a ton of PLFs back in the following week. So there are PLFs that maybe Tom Cruise thought Mission Impossible is going to acquire 2 or 3 weeks from now. Barbie opens to 100, 150, something crazy like that. Barbie's going to be getting handed a lot of PLFs, and that is going to be a problem for Dead
Oh, yeah.
Reckoning. Because if
And the
Dead
thing is,
Reckoning doesn't gain PLFs in its second, third, fourth weekend, then the legs on it are going to have some trouble.
yeah, absolutely. Well, because even this movie in its 5 day opened lower than Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, let that sink in. I mean, but I think
But
the
here's the
5 day of
here's
Dial of, well, go for it. Go for
well,
it.
I
You
was
have the
gonna say,
reasoning.
you can talk about the 5 day, but the reason why it's different, and
Mhm.
it's not just because we wanna bash Disney or any of that BS. It's
Mhm.
because a movie like Crystal Skull opens so much higher
Mhm.
than Fallout, right? It opened twice as big as Fallout. This movie, Indiana Jones, even though it had the same budget, which is a problem, and budgets are a problem. We've talked about how
Right,
budgets are a
right.
problem. They're both $300 million movies, but they both tried to shoot during COVID. So that was
Right.
terrible for both of them. But
It's a
here's
bit
the
of an
thing.
anomaly with the budgets. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to figure out after this what happens with budgets when there isn't, a work stoppage. But I guess the SAG thing will show us also what happens with another work stoppage. But
Mhm.
saying all that, the difference is that this still set a record for Mission Impossible 5 day, even though it was the second Mission Impossible, which was what, 20 some years ago.
Yeah, came out in 2000, yeah.
It still did really well. It didn't drop off a cliff. It did not.
No.
It went under our crazy expectations, but it performed like a Mission Impossible movie,
Yeah.
where Dial of Destiny did not perform like an Indiana Jones movie. It
Right.
performed like a terrible, terrible bomb that nobody has interest in.
Right. Indiana Jones 5 is a drop off in a big way from the opening of Indiana Jones 4. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is a slight uptick in the 5 day from Fallout. So basically the bottom has not dropped out of the series in any way. It just did not get the Maverick bump. And
But I'll
that
tell you
doesn't look
what,
like that's going to happen.
even without Sound of Freedom, I feel like this would not have gotten a Maverick bump. The Maverick bump was fictitious. This is something that I've been saying from the start, okay?
Mhm.
From the beginning, that Maverick was a once in a lifetime film. The Mission Impossible movies are not set up for the same people to see it. And this has proven it. But that is not saying that Maverick's success is Mission Impossible's failure.
Exactly.
This is a number 7. It's a part 1 of 2,
Well,
and it still did well.
it is, in retrospect, was that also a mistake? Why did
Yeah,
they call
people are
this
sick of
part
that shit.
1?
People are
Just
sick of
call
that
this
shit.
Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning,
And
and
then make people
then,
mad.
yeah, with the cliffhanger, or also just don't do a cliffhanger. Here's something I will say is I saw this movie in a movie theater in the town of Saint Remy in the south of France. And big shout out to Cinepalace in San Remy, excellent theater. Went with a friend. We walked in. We said 2 for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. the French woman immediately said in French, basically asking us, do we understand that this movie will not be shown in English? It is shown dubbed in French. And we said, yes, we understand this. We don't care. We saw this movie, 2.5 hour movie, completely in French. And I loved this movie. It really showed me, and we're not critics, huh?
Huh.
But I think it did show off a strength of this series and specifically this movie is that so much you get everything you need without hearing any of the dialogue. And for others, that might be a criticism showing, oh, the dialogue writing is not that good. If you don't even have to understand or to love it, the visuals, the facial acting, everything is there without understanding a word that they're saying. So to me, I think that's going to help it translate, within the United States because people are tired of talking and around the country, all we do is yell at each other. Go to a theater, just look at the images on the screen. I think
Mhm.
that's going to show that this movie translates well across the United States. And listen, Mission Impossible has always been an international play. And the fact that I was able to go watch this dubbed in French and enjoy it as much as I did, I think that's going to show that is a good sign that this movie will continue to do well internationally. And maybe something like Oppenheimer and possibly even Barbie are going to have a harder time internationally, and Dead Reckoning will be able to keep cleaning up there. Because again, Mission Impossible does need to clean up internationally because that's what these movies always do.
And I think it will. I mean, that's the thing is that it's opening strong. We don't talk about worldwide, but it is opening strong there.
Hmm.
And, listen, would it have been fun if this movie opened to 90 in its 5 day, over 100? That
Yeah.
would have been awesome. But this movie just showed what it was, which was it was just another Mission Impossible movie. It has a
Hmm.
ceiling. That ceiling is high, but it's just not gonna bust through it. Nothing is gonna I don't even think the last film, which now, God, there's all these why do they do this? Tom Cruise is talking about this the next one isn't gonna be the last one anymore. It's like this hubris. You just gotta end it. Because any sort of momentum you got from this being one of the final chapters is now gone. And now I guess it's like for these sort of things, it's just like bands saying they're retiring. Like Kiss retired in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, and now they're retiring again. And I don't believe them. And
Right.
we just will never believe that anything's going to end. So don't tell me that this next movie is going to be the last one because we know that's not true.
Right, right. Which I think is fine. I mean, I know we talked about that a lot with the Fast movies that they absolutely need to end it on the next movie, that franchise out of steam. I don't think Tom Cruise needs to talk about the end when it comes to Mission Impossible because creatively these feel in a much better place than the Fast movies. Obviously, box office wise, it's not going to have a Maverick bump, but the series is not falling on a decline the way the Fast movies are. So I think it's just a waste of time for him to hint at the end. Let him consider making 3, 4, 5 more Mission Impossible movies right now. I think he's totally in a place where he does not have to pretend that it's ending. Just every 2, 3 years, there'll be another Mission Impossible movie. And for right now, that's a totally fine idea.
But what I will say is, overall, you know, Tom Cruise's whole Messiah thing, savior of the box office, he always will have saved theaters with Maverick.
Yes.
But, he promoted subpar movies. Now he's going and saying Blue Beetle is what theaters need. This movie, with all its promotion, it had a ton of promotion. I mean, this thing had so much promotion. And for it only to do number one, less in its opening weekend than the last one, which of course was diluted by being a 5 day situation
Right.
on weekdays where people have to go to work.
If this
Like
movie had opened on the Friday, it wouldn't have
beats
made.
Fallout.
Yes, I think if this movie had just had its Thursday night previews and opened officially on the Friday, the 3-day weekend, which would have included the Thursday night grosses, would have been probably closer to 70 million. It wouldn't have
Yep.
made the 80 plus million that this movie made in its 5-day. But I do think if it had just opened on Friday, July 14th, with previews the night before that got rolled into the 3-day, that's probably a 3-day weekend of around 70 million. And I
Because
think there
nobody
is a different narrative, even though that's less
yeah.
money. That's 70 million is less than 85 million. I think the narrative is different if it only opens to a 3-day of $70 million. That I do think that was narratively a mistake, if not,
Oh, yeah.
hard numbers wise.
Because now they're comping this 5-day to a Memorial Day from 2002 or whatever
Right, right,
when it made when Mission Impossible 2 made $78 million.
right.
And that people don't wanna hear that. They wanna hear this movie opened higher than the last one, which was
Yes,
Fallout. If
yes.
this movie made $10 million more than the last one, they'd say, "Wow, now it's even stronger."
Right.
Now this muddies
Yes.
it because it opened to 56 and people are gonna look at 56 and be like,
That's
"Didn't the
smaller than
last one open to
61.
61?" Right? That's
Right,
smaller. I know math.
right,
That was a problem. That was a
right,
problem. And I mean, the bigger problem is you just need to have so many PLFs that this movie could have lived up to the demand, because I do think there was people who weren't able to see this movie in the format they wanted to see, and so they skipped it. Because older people aren't going to sit in a rat hole theater unless it's for the children. They will
right,
want to see they will want to go and sit in a comfy chair because of their hemorrhoids,
right,
and they want to eat fancier food because
right.
they can afford it. That's the thing, is that this is a premium experience and there's not enough available places for them to have a premium experience.
Right, right. And I think an issue for the opening weekend of Mission Impossible, but obviously more so the next couple of weeks, is last year, like you said, Tom Cruise was the story with Maverick. And I think a lot of people, including us at different points, thought maybe this summer Tom Cruise would be the story again, especially after the terrible June. He's going to
Mhm.
come in once again and save movie theaters. And instead, the narrative has been the Sound of Freedom, what's going on there. But I think in a bigger way, people are waiting for Barbie to be the savior this
Yeah.
summer. Barbie is very possibly going to be the Maverick of this summer. And so Tom Cruise loses some thunder, even though Barbie hasn't opened. I do think there's a lot of people who are just like, I got to wait for the big one. The big one is next week. The big one is Barbie. And I think that does hurt Tom Cruise a little bit because he wanted to be the savior 2 years in a row.
Well, I mean, if we're talking stories of the summer as they are right now, right? And
Right.
these are not in chronological order, but I'll say Barbie Oppenheimer is number 1, because the fever over this, I mean, as much as Nolan is mad that his old studio is opening direct competition against him, his movie is gonna do so much better now because of
Yes.
this whole thing than it would have
Mhm.
done if it just dropped, in November or December, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
number 1. Number 2 is Sound of Freedom, it's gotta be. Number
Right.
3 is Spidey cartoon.
Spidey cartoon. Yes.
Number 4 is high, d d bombs like, Flash, Dial of Destiny,
Yes.
these big franchise movies, these big superhero movies failing. That is the number 4. And number 5, I wouldn't put Tom Cruise in there. I think it's TBD. I think the 5th biggest story of the summer is yet to be written, because this movie is
It
just
could be
gonna be a Mission
Strays.
Impossible movie.
It
Could
could
be
be
Strays,
Strays. You
absolutely.
know, Kirk Minahan said this on these airwaves a couple of weeks ago. He's predicting Strays to be huge. Strays could be a bigger story this summer than Dead Reckoning, and that's again, we're not coming here to put Dead Reckoning in that mix of June bombs or Transformers and Dial of Destiny. That is not what happened here. It just is not going to be the big breakout, and it's not going to have what a lot of people thought would be a Maverick bump. The Maverick bump is
Did not
not going to
materialize.
happen. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So,
just
I mean
real quick on the
mhm,
comedy tip, because we got everything right last other than the numbers for Mission Impossible, we got the top 5, we nailed it.
yep,
And then number 8, No Hard Feelings, made
yeah.
$3.3 million. Number 9 was Joyride, made 2.5. Again, Jennifer Lawrence wins. I don't think the Joyride, run is gonna happen. This movie will
No,
probably
no.
do really good on streaming, but it ain't gonna do well in the theaters. It is DOA.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, No Hard Feelings is at this point looks like 50 million will happen. It's at
Mhm.
46.5 and it just made 3.3 last weekend. So it's probably got a few more weekends left where it makes two, it makes one and a half, it makes one. So it'll get to 50, but that's probably around where it tops out. Maybe it hits
Yeah.
55. So it's going to end up at a number that I think is fine, is not anything to do with dance over, but is not anything that lessens Jennifer Lawrence's star. You know,
No,
I mean,
no, I think this definitely shows that she can, make hay out of, something that other people can't. I mean, I think this shows that she still is powerful as a star and has a
right,
base.
right. I mean, when you look at just that comparison of Joyride probably topping out at around 15 million and No Hard Feelings getting to 55 million, the difference there is Jennifer Lawrence. You flip
Yep.
flop her into Joyride and not in No Hard Feelings, and Joyride probably makes 55 and No Hard Feelings makes 10 or 15 total.
I mean, the problem is, of course, budget is that No Hard Feelings is 45 million and you can't pay that much for a comedy that's not is only going to make $5 million more at the theater.
Right.
And of
It
course,
has
it's going to
made
make you
it's
go ahead.
made another $31 million outside of North America. So it's at 77.5 worldwide. So that again shows what you could get out of a movie star is she has a comedy out, and comedy doesn't often translate worldwide as well as other genres, and it's already made another $31 million outside of the United States. I mean, again, that's what you're paying for when you pay Jennifer Lawrence or you pay one of these big stars. Their quote is she's able to open a premise of this nerd tries to get laid, and it's already made $31 million outside of the US.
And I mean that beach scene
Yes.
is universal.
Yes, yes, yes. That's a movie I could have seen at the Cinepalace in San Remy, and it's all in French. And probably a lot of it would be tougher than Mission Impossible. But when you get to the Jennifer Lawrence beach scene, then I would say, "Oh, this works in any language."
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll throw this out here, Clayton. Where are you on Pixar's Elemental? Dropped
I
only
knew you were gonna say
13%
this.
last week, 8.7. It's now up to 125 million. I want to shout out a fan of the show on Twitter, goes by the handle Family, who tweeted to me a uh, a list of what Pixar releases did in their fifth weekend. All right, what they did in their fifth weekend, and Elemental is now in that list, has the fifth best fifth weekend of Pixar films, only beaten by the fifth weekends of Finding Nemo, Up, Inside Out, and Cars. So Elemental's fifth weekend did pretty well amongst Pixar movies, which
Now,
is all to say it's holding okay. Now, I'm
here's
not talking
another
drop, I'm talking about hard numbers.
here's another thing since I'm on strike. I cannot act like I give an S about these middle-aged Pixar fans. Who gives an S? Who gives an F? When you look at how much this movie has made, right? Sure, it beat Onward. It's beating Lightyear. It beat out The Good Dinosaur, another turd by the same director. It's at 125, okay? The movie next highest grossing over that is Cars 3, which is at 152.9 domestic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to reach that. So it is what it is.
You know,
It's at no,
it
it won't.
might.
No, it
Clayton,
won't.
this movie
Barbie's
is holding
coming.
real. Barbie is coming. That's the problem. Yeah, it's
There's
a
no
problem for everyone.
reason to keep this, and then Disney has another turd coming, Haunted Mansion, so they've got to make some room for screens for that. This movie is not, even if it makes 152, it's not going to make 162 and beat A Bug's Life. Listen, I'm not saying that Pixar is completely done and this is a disaster or anything like that. All I'm saying is that the fact that this movie opened so low and people had to wait and see with it, and the fact that kids are moving over to Mario and Barbie and things like that, it's doing okay, but this isn't good for Pixar when it's still in the company of Elemental, The Good Dinosaur, and Lightyear. Like these tiny victories that people are celebrating, I don't understand it. Like I don't understand why you have to try and continue to prop up this corpse. It doesn't make sense to me. It's personal for them, and that's fine. You can be personally invested, but the fact that it's the best, the fifth Friday or whatever, who gives a F? I know we give an F because we're BO boys, right?
Right.
But this is not a story. This is not, I hear people throwing out Puss in Boots. F you and your Puss in Boots. Puss in Boots is a different story because this is a Pixar movie, okay? Pixar movies are supposed to do Bafa Bobo. They're
Well, that was a
supposed
Shrek
to.
movie. That was a Shrek spinoff. You
No, I
can't let's
mean,
not downplay Puss in Boots and its IP connection.
okay,
It's a
but what I'm
Shrek
saying
spinoff.
is that
It's from the
don't
Shrekiverse.
don't say Elemental was in the same boat as Puss in Boots. Okay, when people tweet that, it makes me so angry because it's not the same thing. Okay, just live with the fact that Pixar is not a Goliath like it used to be,
Oh, it's
and
definitely not. But Elemental, especially after that opening weekend, opening what, half as much as Lightyear, Elemental could have been a full-on death knell for all of Pixar. And with the run it's had since, it definitely is not that, and has now become, I think, a sigh of relief. And again, Pixar should be beyond sighs of relief, but Elemental has had a pretty good run since that opening weekend.
I
Whereas
mean,
this,
listen.
after the opening weekend, this could have been a full-on disaster, and
Well,
that did
okay.
not
Well,
happen.
then, if you are Pixar and your bar of success is not this isn't a full on disaster, then good for you. Pat yourselves on your back. Enjoy your free kind bars or whatever you have at the Pixar HQ. Go ahead and go home and believe that you're still at the top of your game and you're still important to culture. You can believe that. Go ahead and do it, but it ain't going to make it true. Okay? Because there's something gnawing in their bellies that they know it's coming to an end. And guess what?
Well,
You've got you've got partners in that cuz Marvel is coming to an end, okay? It's of course you're still going to have big movies from Marvel, but they're no longer a rush out and see. They're a wait and see. And Pixar is a wait and see. And you know what's not a wait and see? Mario. Mario's not a wait and see. It's a rush out and see. Illumination are rush out and see. Okay? And you're not rush out and see anymore, Pixar. That's fine.
but they just had
But stop
a very
celebrating
good
your
fifth weekend. They had a
Stop
very good
celebrating your
fifth
tiny
weekend.
victories. It's pathetic. It's sad. These tiny victories that who oh my god. If I had this such small victories in my life, I don't know if I could keep going.
I think if you had a good fifth weekend, you'd be happy about it in your
Listen,
life.
I don't
If
know
you were
cuz
doing something for 5 weeks in a row and you saw the fifth weekend of it was pretty good, I think I'd congratulate you if you
I mean,
ever had a
listen,
good fifth weekend.
I don't know because we keep moving up the podcast charts, so I'm not in the same position as Pixar. I feel
Right.
like I'm looking up and they're looking down. And
Obviously,
so
the BO boys are closer to being the center of the culture than Pixar is, but Pixar with Elementals is not in the grave yet, which is where they could have been.
So they staved off the death knell
Yes.
for now. So I guess throw a huge party. But if I was Disney, listen, Dial of Destiny was a turd. Haunted Mansion is going to be a turd. I mean, that's a movie we're going to talk about. That thing, oh my God, talk about DOA. Disney's going to have one of the worst summers, other than Guardians, they've ever had.
So maybe to end on this, we look back to Guardians and
Mm-hmm.
how that opened uh lower than everyone thought, and there was some hand wringing after Guardians opened, and then it's gone on to have a outstanding run, great legs, got to 358 million domestic after opening. Just want to check again real quick what it opened at. It did open to 118, so
Yeah.
obviously twice as much as what Mission Impossible, or more than what Mission Impossible. Do you see any chance that Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning has a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 type run? You
Pardon me.
know,
Um, no, I just don't think so. I mean, it's not a super. I mean, they're different leagues.
yeah,
Those
yeah, yeah.
movies, even the
Yeah.
lowest superhero movie has more interest than.
Well, not getting to the raw number of, getting to
You mean the
358 million
drops?
domestic. The drops, but Guardians had a good second weekend 48% drop, had a good 48%, then it was 36, 49. I do think Dead Reckoning could do that, possibly. Could be dropping around, high 40s or 50 million. I mean, I think it's possible, because what happened with Guardians is it's a very good movie that people waited for more than they usually do superhero movie, and the word of mouth was good. So that, to me, that's the best case scenario of Mission Impossible. I think what Guardians had going for it was that June runway of turd after turd opening, whereas Dead Reckoning obviously has Barbie and Oppenheimer coming out next week,
I
and
mean,
Sound
but
of
it
Freedom.
could make hay in August. I mean, that is
It could make hay in
possible.
August. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. So I
It
mean,
definitely.
listen, it is not going to be a huge disappointment.
No, no. That's the thing. It would be, well, we'll see on our preview weekend. We'll go over our predictions. Even with all the competition coming up, it'd be surprising if Dead Reckoning had like a 60% drop. I still think the hold will be good um in its second weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
we will see. Anything else that you want to
Nope.
touch
There's
on
nothing to
in
talk
this
about.
top 10?
We
And
we.
last thing, Clayton, we touched on it earlier. You're currently on strike. You
Mm-hmm.
are a member of SAG in bad standing. You haven't paid your dues in years, but
Yeah.
officially, since you're part of SAG, Clayton is on strike.
Uh-huh.
Have you picketed anything this week? Have you whether it's a production, or just have you stood out? Have you loitered outside of any businesses? What has your strike activity been in these first few days of the strike?
I mean, not much. I mean, obviously, my mind is taken up a lot with box office. I had to watch these numbers. I didn't have
Right,
much else I could do. Um, maybe I'll go over to Silver Cup. I don't know if anything's going on over there, but
right.
I could pop by Silver Cup, maybe, throw a few eggs, make my presence known,
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that.
Are they encouraging egg throwing, or is this
No, but
just
I
something
think you
you're going to
gotta get
start?
dirty. I think everybody's having too much fun at these picket lines. I think they need to start getting a little bit more riled up.
Okay.
It's
Is
too
that something?
kumbaya theater, kid energy at these picket lines. I think that needs to change.
Okay. Is that something you're planning to just take upon yourself and just do, or will you bring that to your SAG president, Fran Drescher, directly? Will you suggest we start throwing eggs, get these actors some eggs?
Let me tell you something real quick, because I know, I mean, Fran Drescher, if you watch that speech, I know she's a TV actress, huh?
Huh.
Beautician and the Beast never launched her into stardom as a movie
Mm-hmm.
star, although she was part of Spinal Tap, which is an all-time classic.
Yep.
Maybe not a box office classic, but definitely on the cult film circuit can do midnight showings. I'll tell you what, that speech fired me up. That
Mhm.
was a fiery speech, and I know I was a little glib last time,
Right.
last episode, I was being very glib
Yep.
about the strike, but I'm all in now, baby. It almost makes me
Wow.
wanna pay my dues. It almost makes me wanna pay my dues. I'm not gonna, but it almost makes me want to. So we'll
W
see. I mean, there could be some rabble-rousing in my future. There's a possibility
Wow.
that I might be, incarcerated for my actions. Who knows? But,
Wow.
that's a
Fascinating.
possibility. It's a possibility.
Wow. So we've
I
done
would have to do it after Barbie Oppenheimer. I mean, we will have to talk in the future coming up because I think the promotion for Barbie and Oppenheimer has been done. Those movies have been
Yes.
properly
They had their
marketed. They
premieres.
had their
Yeah.
premieres. We've seen Gosling. We've seen Barbie herself.
Margot
We've seen
Robbie's been
Margot
everywhere.
Robbie.
Yeah.
You know, there was the big walkout at Oppenheimer, which gave it much press,
Yep.
which was good. But coming up, I mean, some of these movies at the end of this summer, they're not going to even be able to do promotion for it. Like it was
Right.
like there was no talk shows, but there's going to be no shows. I mean, this is going to be bad for some of these movies.
Right. Right. It would be one thing when Strays was originally supposed to open in June.
Hmm.
And when it moved to August, a theory as to why it moved to August was the WGA was going on strike. Therefore, the talk shows would be dark in
Hmm.
June. And so you couldn't have Will Ferrell and Will Forte and Jamie Foxx and so on go on late night talk shows because of the WGA strike. Now, because of the SAG strike that you're a part of, they can't do anything. So Will Ferrell can't even do a podcast to
No,
promote this show. They're not allowed to do any promotion because they're striking. So you can't have Will Forte do hot ones or Jamie Foxx do hot ones. That is all off the table. They
and
can't
listen,
do
he,
WTF. They
he
can't
can't
do it.
he can't be barely audible on a rewatchables.
Right.
He
Right.
doesn't even have the, opportunity to not be heard on a
Okay.
show as big as the rewatchables.
Is that oh, I do wonder if that counts. When you're part of SAG, so you maybe could look into the bylaws. Could these actors go on the rewatchables to promote their movies as long as Bill Simmons
Forgets to
forgets to
press record.
record on the good
Yeah.
microphone? I mean, I do think that promoting your film only using the built-in microphones on your laptop, that may be permissible to
Mhm.
SAG. Obviously, if you had a real producer who was hitting record and everything was sounding great, sure, that
No,
is
can't do it.
doing yeah, that's breaking the SAG strike. But as long as you go on a Bill Simmons show and he's not hitting record on the good microphones, to me that doesn't feel like that's actually even promoting the movie.
Well, at that point, it's just a Zoom conversation. It's not
Exactly.
even a recording session.
Right, right, right. So I think that's something for you to when you have your weekly meeting with Fran Drescher, ask her if you should start throwing eggs and
Mhm.
ask her if actors could promote their movie on podcasts where the host does not press record on the good microphone.
I mean, it stinks because, we're getting big and we could get some of these high profile people, but we always press record. So,
We always press record, so they can't come on here, and obviously you're part of SAG, so you're not going to break
no.
any of your union's rules.
Nope.
So yeah, you will not press record on a star that is trying to promote their movie
Can't do it.
while the strike is going
No
on.
place for scabs on this podcast for sure.
So, Clayton, I think that's all we've got this week. So, listen, everybody, first thing here, give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And I got to say, we should have started the show by thanking our wannabe O boys, wannabe O girls, wannabe O people
People.
because we have gotten a rush of reviews on Apple Podcasts the last few weeks, some amazing 5-star reviews. And the thing that I'm seeing in several reviews is just people saying, love the show, blah, blah, blah. We got that from a fan called Riffman, just wrote, love the show, blah, 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 5 stars. That's all you got to do is you just got to write in love the show, blah, 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 5 stars.
Yep.
and that helps new listeners find this show. We got several of those. Tambo7 told us that, and we've got Movie Man 1025 said, I'm not a critic, huh? We love seeing people say I'm not a critic, huh? Write whatever you want as long as you give us 5 stars. And also, we're getting lots of people who said they found us through the Kirk Minahan episode. They were Mina
Of course.
fans, and now they are wanna be O boys, wanna be O girls, wanna be O people.
People. Yeah, we got
So,
one from The Ringer who said, love the show, blah, 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 5 stars. Minahan Bump, love the show, blah, 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 5 stars. Seriously love it. And weekly pod rotation now. Keep up the great box office analysis. We also got one from Kirk in the Car that said, very
okay.
enjoyable podcast, 5 stars all day, although they gave us 4 stars. So, Kirk in the Car, maybe go back and just add that 1 star because you did say 5 stars in your review. You want to be a person of your word.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like sometimes people get so excited that they just tap their or they got big thumbs. I think that's still a problem these days is the big thumbs. So the Maverick bump might not have been real, but the Minahan bump is definitely real for the BO
Oh,
boys.
it is definitely
So
real.
So give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Of course, follow us on social media. We are on TikTok. We are on Twitter at the BO Boys Pod. Want to be our intern Christopher, killing it with the vertical videos. And I will be meeting in person for the first time. Want to be our intern Christopher in just a few days because I will be traveling to San Diego for Comic-Con, and Want to be our intern Christopher will also be there. So we're going to be together. We're seeing the Barbie movie on Friday night, and we're going to be boots on the ground reporting from Comic-Con. So if you're in San Diego, if you are a listener who lives in San Diego, I'm going to be out there. So, come by the convention center, and if you see me amongst the 400,000 people, well, this year, there's not going to be any movie stars, TV
No,
stars, actors. This is going to be a celebrity light San Diego Comic-Con. So honestly, at this point, the BO boys, a BO boy being on site at Comic-Con,
biggest
I
thing out
moved
there.
to the top, 2-3 percentile of stars that will be appearing at San Diego Comic-Con. Obviously, podcasters are not on strike, so I'm not breaking any union rules by appearing at San Diego Comic-Con. But yeah, if you're in San Diego, I'm going to be out there, and Want to be intern Christopher is going to be out there on site at Comic-Con. Love
I love
seeing
how
our
yeah, I mean
yes,
you do, and I know you do, but I know you're setting a precedent with you, and I think it's great that you want to meet the fans, the want to be boys, want to be girls, want to be people.
people.
But I'm going to respectfully ask, if I am recognized on the street, no matter where I am, do not approach.
Mhm.
That is a DNA for everyone. Do not approach
Right,
me.
right, right.
I,
And a
if you
DNR also if you see Clayton.
absolutely a DNR, it's already in the will, and you know that.
Right,
But
right. I put it there.
DNA, you put it there.
Yeah,
Yeah. You're the executor of my will.
yeah,
But DNA, just remember that. If you
yes.
see this face, you go the other way.
Yes. The thing is, if you see Clayton in public, there is a good chance he has a carton of rotten eggs that he's about to throw. So you just want to steer clear in general.
Mhm.
You don't want to get hit with one of his strike eggs. But I'm much more approachable as long as you keep it quick, you keep it brief, you don't ask for autographs or pictures, you just come over and state your fandom. But I will be in San Diego at Comic Con this week. So, San Diego listeners, look for me and Want to be a intern Christopher. That's where we'll be. Follow us, of course, on YouTube. We are YouTubers now. The YouTube channel is growing. And so subscribe to us on YouTube. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. And Clayton, what else do you do on YouTube?
Ring that bell.
Ring that bell. Every time you ring that bell, I don't know, something for a kidnapped child. Let's
Sure.
just put it out there. It works for
Yeah.
Angel Studios. So for us to ring every time you ring that bell, something, a kidnapped child.
Mhm.
So let's see where that gets us. And of course, email us, theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. We love getting your emails, and we will read more of those on the preview episode later in the week. So send us your boots on the ground reporting, your predictions. I mean, this is a big one.
It's
Send
the
us your
biggest weekend of the summer for sure.
yes. So send us your predictions for the opening weekend of Barbenheimer, for the opening weekend of Barbie, for the opening weekend of Oppenheimer. We'll get into it later in the week, but do you think Barbie's going to open to 150? I mean, it's wild what these numbers are looking like now. So send us your predictions at theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. I would say get us your predictions by Wednesday morning,
Mhm.
because we may be recording Wednesday night. So if you have a prediction email you want to send us by early Wednesday, theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. We'll read them on the episode. And I think that's it. I
Oh,
think that's all I got. Yeah,
it's gotta be it. There
it's
can't be
got to be.
anything else, Pat. There
No,
cannot be a single other thing to say
no.
except for until next time. We'll
Will
smell
smell you
you
at
at the
the
box
box
office.
office.
Nailed
Nailed it.
it.